Well, this is all about the populist spirit in Texas culture. To me, politics is not just about issues and candidates. It's also expressed through our music, cartoons, photographs, food, literature, movies, just all different aspects of our life. And I've often felt that progressives spend way too much time immersed on issues and details and debates and too little time enjoying the pub culture. Good drink, good food, good music, and good laughs. That's what creates a movement. That brings us together. Well, as the exhibit back behind us in here shows, I've always tried to put the party in politics. And that's why we're putting an emphasis on this joyous aspect of populism, the reception that will follow, great food, great beer and wine, all from Texas, of course, and this fabulous panel, Populism in Texas Culture. I'll just run down the group here and introduce everybody, and then we'll turn it over to Gary Hartman, our moderator. Ben Sargent, for most of us, a prize is something you find in a Cracker Jacks box. But thanks to inordinate talent, political insight, gutsiness, Ben Sargent hit the big one in 1982, winning the Pulitzer Prize for editorial cartooning, and was, by the way, a finalist again in 2001. He's one of America's jewels. Proud to have him. I must note that I personally resent cartoonists. It takes me about 3,000 words or so in my Hightower lowdown to get an issue discussed. But Ben does it in only a dozen words, and then he draws a picture of it. So it's really unfair to have to compete with people who have talent. But here's a guy who's always put his talent behind a strong populist message. Also, next to Ben is longtime pal of mine, Carolyn Mugar. Cambridge, Massachusetts would not generally be considered a hotbed of populist activity. But one part of it is because that's where Carolyn Mugar is. I've known her for many years as an activist, an advocate, an agitator on issues ranging from labor to toxics, Armenian rights to community empowerment. 1985, though, we connected on a common campaign, and that was Farm Aid. That was Willie Nelson's first Farm Aid, and much to the shock and amazement of everybody, Willie made a ton of money. So what to do with it became the question. Who to trust with it? Who would not steal it? So he found Carolyn Mugar, and that's how Farm Aid came to be based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She is smart, she is creative, she's fun, and she is tireless, and she's going to be a jewel in our discussion here this afternoon. Alan Pogue, I first encountered Alan 30 years ago in the inaugural parade for Bill Clements, who'd been elected governor, Republican. And there was Alan, not officially in the parade, but he was walking right alongside Clements's limousine, snapping pictures of everybody all around. And Alan was unmistakable because he had long, straight hair all the way down to his butt and little pink hair clips attached to him. And I thought, he's going to get the shit beat out of him by the Secret Service here. Well, anyway. From his days in the Vietnam War, through his time living and marching with Texas migrant workers throughout South Texas and on into George W.'s Iraq War, Alan's been a frontline documentarian, photographer, and a populist activist as well. He's on the board, the advisory board here at the Wittliff Collections, and I've been proud to work with him over the years, going back to when I was editor of the Texas Observer, and we would put his photographs in there. And then finally and tallest, Tom Pittman. Tom's a professor of banjoology, a storehouse of grassroots music, a man of wry and sly wit, a person of strong populist opinion, and a founding reptile of the renowned Austin Lounge Lizards. The Lizards played a major role in advancing my career. In 1990, running for re-election as ag commissioner, I took the Lizards on the road into East Texas with me. And as a result of that tour, I lost counties I had always won. and I was advanced right out of politics into the world of writing and commenting. I've never had the chance to thank you publicly and properly for that, Tom, but I do appreciate all of that. So let's go to our wonderful monitor here, moderator, Gary Hartman. He's the director of the Center for Texas Music History here, and by the by, they've got their latest publication out that has a relevant article in it, Woody Guthrie and the Christian Left. All the stars are aligning here to be perfect. He doesn't just talk music, Gary also plays it. He's been in some of the finer bars here in San Marcos and Austin, and not just under the table. He's actually been on the stage with groups like the Texas Swing Kings and the Lone Star Swing. So join Gary Hartman and the whole panel here. Thank you. Take it away.
Thank you, Jim. Well, I'm very pleased to be here today, and I'm certainly proud to be part of a celebration of Jim, a man who tells us the truth even if we don't want to hear the truth. And he usually does it in a humorous way, so that is always a good thing as well. Thanks for your kind words about the Center for Texas Music History, too, Jim. I'm very proud of it, and at the risk of a shameless plug on behalf of the Center, I debated whether to do this, but since Jimmy sang a couple of Woody Guthrie songs earlier, I did bring some copies of the Journal of Texas Music History that we publish, and it has an article in there about Woody Guthrie and populism, directly relevant to what we have going on today. In fact, it talks about Woody Guthrie and the Christian left movement of the 1930s, back then when the fundamentalist Christians, many of them, believed that Christ's teachings came closer to embracing some of the socialist principles of distributing wealth equally and that sort of thing. So if you want a copy of that, I've got that up here. But thank you for that. And we discussed some ground rules for this panel today. And we want everybody to have fun. We want to keep it high energy and keep things moving. But Jim and I talked about some rules. I'm gonna go through the panel here, this distinguished group of folks, and I'm going to ask each one of them a question, and they'll have 3 or 4, maybe 5 minutes to respond, and I'll go through the panel a couple of times, and then we will open it up toward the end to questions from the audience. We will do that, but we'll save the Q&A from the audience till the second half of the panel, if that's okay with everyone. Now, we also talked about whether we should have a gong or a flashing light or something to let someone know that they've gone on too long. We couldn't find a gong, but I did find a roll of duct tape in case anybody talks for too long. Now, Jim would hasten to add that duct tape could apply to me, too, if I go on for too long, so I won't do that. But I will ask the panelists if we could keep the responses to about 3 or 4 minutes, and we'll get through a couple of questions each. And if you feel like engaging each other on any of these, of course, feel free to do that. And then we'll get some input from the audience. So thank you all for being here. I'm very honored to be part of this. Carolyn, I'm going to start with you. We're not going to go in any particular order, but I will start with you. What you've done with Farm Aid is absolutely remarkable. It's very rare that an annual event can become a household name that everybody knows and become a household name almost immediately. Everyone knows what Farm Aid is. You know immediately when someone talks about that, you know what it is, you know what purpose it serves, and so on. Part of that is, I think, part of it is because of people like Willie Nelson and other folks that you've brought in. You've really done a good job of focusing that. How could you connect the needs of farmers, the cause of farmers, the plight of farmers, really, with a broader need of urban workers, college students, inner city families, folks like that? How could you connect Farm Aid and what it does for farmers more broadly with the needs of urban folks and others?
Well, first of all, I just have to make a few corrections.
Okay.
So we'll just start this off peppery. You know, Willie Nelson really started Farm Aid, and Willie set the tone for all of us. Anybody associated with Farm Aid, anybody who knew anything about it, he saw something wrong in the country, and he didn't just say, that's a darn shame. He used all of his abilities to stand up and say, we've got to do something. And when Willie comes forward with that kind of commitment, there's just about nothing you can't do. And it's just about no reach that you can't get to, because Willie has a reach that is beyond any of us, any of what we can anticipate. Nobody could ever imagine when Willie left Nashville, you know, kind of like at the end of his rope, when Bill, however long ago it was, and he came to Texas and he united rednecks with hippies, right? And there was no one else doing that anywhere. And you never saw those same people under a same tent. And that's exactly what Willie did with Farm Aid. He created a big tent, and he set a mood so that people felt free to come together in ways that they hadn't been coming together. And they felt free to farmers that sometimes disagreed with each other. Not just farmers, but farmers and eaters. Anybody who was cared, as Willie says, if you eat, you're part of agriculture. And everybody, Willie is, I keep telling people, you know, with communicators on board like we have, which is Willie Nelson, and then soon after, Neil Young and John Mellencamp joined Willie, and then about 12 years ago or something, Dave Matthews came on board. And there's 4 of the most extraordinary communicators in the country there. And there's just about nothing you can't get to when you've got those kinds of people on board. And Willie, we really followed Willie's lead completely when we started, and we do still to this day, and that is Willie is an extremely respectful listener. He, that's where he gets his wealth of insights, obviously. And he listens to people, and as Farm Aid proceeded, we listened to people in the countryside. We went out and we listened to farmers, and we brought people together. And then Farm Aid sort of operated at first particularly as kind of a stage and a sound system. We gave farmers more of a voice. We gave them a louder voice, and we gave them a stage to stand on and a better loudspeaker system and some lights and stuff. And so it really kind of provided an opportunity for the family farmer to come forward, which in turn gave a lot of family farmers hope that they didn't have before that. And I'm not really ever going to get to your question, so don't worry. But but I would like to say that I think that that kind of a connection that Willie gave farmers, they felt like someone was listening. And we've heard from so many farmers over the years. We have so many letters from people saying that, Willie, you gave me the courage and the strength to carry on, and they would have quit farming. But Willie, they felt that through Willie there was like this electric current. You know, Willie was listening to them, their voice was being heard, and their concerns were out there among people, and people cared. And Farm Aid was an opportunity for people to care because people came forward with a lot of money. And it really helped farmers, and it also helped farmers in fact, and it helped farmers in terms of where they could operate from emotionally and politically, because that kind of connection is, you can't buy that kind of connection. And that's what Willie really gave people. And I want to say something at the outset here. There's 2 people in this audience which should be up here, but I'm gonna drag them up if I have to drag them physically at some point. But they'll come up here in terms of questions and answers. Bill Wittliff, have you heard of him? Bill Wittliff was at Farm Aid way before I was. Bill knew Willie from years ago and had just worked on a film with Willie, and he wrote country. And so Bill had been out in the countryside and found a lot of the people that we ended up talking to at the very beginning of Farm Aid to find out what really was going on in the countryside. And Bill had foraged for those people, and he had dug for that wealth, and he really is at the foundation of Farm Aid. And Glenda Yoder, with whom I have worked now for 20 years, Glenda, stand up. Wave your hand. Glenda, Glenda is the heart, soul, and I should say mind of Farm Aid. So anyway, I just want to refer to you, for you to know them so that we can include them in any of the conversation. So I'm so glad I could answer your question.